One single week of trading can teach you a lot more than months and months upon months of analyzing. This past trading week started off pretty bad for my trading team. Firstly, we had a missed opportunity on gold, followed by a stop loss hit on Monday on US30, and then obviously a beautiful move that we then caught on gold, giving us plus 600 pips. Now in this video, you are going to learn only 3 things. Firstly, being the power of patience. Second, how to bounce back from your losses. And thirdly, how to ride winning trades to the absolute last pip. Now, like I said, we managed to catch a 600 pip movement on gold. And how did we get there, right? Let's break it down. Now, this is not a chart replay. This is exactly how I was trading as the market was progressing. We're going to start on the 30 minutes time frame. Now, notice this aggressive drop that we had right here. We had a series of strong bearish candlesticks showing that sellers were in full control. But then something crucial happened. As the price reached this level, we saw a significant shift. Just look at the candlestick right here. It formed a long wick to the upside. What does that tell us? It's a strong signal that the sellers were losing momentum and the buyers started to step in, rejecting lower prices. This is always our first sign that a potential reversal is cooking up. You always want to pay attention to this type of setup. Now, immediately after that week, we can see the buyers took over and started to push the price up, confirming that this area is a newly formed support zone. As the price moved up, it found resistance at this higher level. So now we had our initial range, a clear support and a clear resistance area. Then obviously that's the second thing you always want to do when you're trying to look for an A+ setup. Now, my expectation here was very simple. The market could likely congest or play around within these zones for a bit before it starts making its move or its major moves to the upside. And that's exactly what it did. You can see it rejected the resistance and then came back to test the support, forming this tight little range at this level. And then came a pivotal moment at this level. Price finally broke out of this range that was forming to the upside. And yes, we can see that this breakout was very powerful, but what gave me more conviction to hold this trade was what happened next. It didn't just shoot up, it formed a little consolidation right here at the resistance level. Now, that is also another thing we look at. Consolidation at a support or a resistance level indicates that the market has potential to break out of that level and keep pushing higher. Now, as it started to break out of this consolidation, I already knew that this is now a resistance broken out of, turned into a support. We now have a new support area. That's a classic flip, confirming the upward momentum, and that was the massive green light to keep holding this trade that we had. And then the momentum just kept building and building, and at this point we're already up plus 239 pips on this single movement, and there was absolutely no reason to close this trade. The structure was still very bullish, and the market kept confirming by giving us higher highs and higher lows. Now, the market continued to push up, and we all saw that, eventually reaching our next significant resistance level all the way up here. This was the moment of truth, and I asked everyone in our free trading group, should we add positions or should we close this incredible movement? And surprisingly enough, the majority voted that we wait for a breakout, and that's exactly what we did. We held on to the trade, we trusted the analysis, and watched gold as it eventually shot up to these levels that we are looking at right over there. That's the final resistance, and that's exactly how we rode up this plus 600 pip move, and brings us to our weekly analysis for today, looking at gold. We're obviously going to start with the gold chart. Before we do all of that good stuff, if you're new, find the channel for the first time, welcome. We trade the NASDAQ over here. If you're returning, you know what's up. Don't forget to hit that like button, turn your post notifications, and subscribe to the channel. Now let's go straight onto the chart. All right, perfect. So we're going to start with our chart on gold. As you can see, this is our great movement that we caught and everything that I was explaining right over here. The chart played out exactly as we wanted to do that. Now, the most beautiful thing about this is we had a swing trade. Now, my final take profit on this movement is around about this area. So I was expecting, not within the very, same week for gold to go and hit these levels or to go back to its all-time highs. As you can see, I strongly believe that these levels are levels of liquidity. As you can see, we have a couple of equal highs, and it's kind of like acting as a magnet. The reason why the market should go back to that level, compared to these bottom levels, the market always moves with a reason, right? What is the reason for gold to drop to come back to these levels? For me currently, I don't really see that reason. But what's the reason for gold to come back to these levels is because of these highs. There's a lot of money resting in these areas, so it would want to push back to these levels. And even traders that are selling at these areas also. And the news, right, if we see that we have crazy rumors of tariffs and all of those things, that can cause gold to push back up to the top because of uncertainty in the market, and that's not going to be good for the stocks that we'll be looking at here. But for our analysis on gold, right, what I would expect to see now is, just like everyone said, which was very good, let's wait for a breakout of this area. All right, so if we get a breakout of this area, we want to be careful, because you can see that we have something like an immediate resistance area right at this level here. So you want to be careful, because this might not be a great movement. We don't really know where gold would decide to reverse, as this area is already, an area of resistance, right? Remember, we don't have anything called a line of resistance. So we don't really know if gold will reverse here or here or here or here or here, right? So that makes this area very tricky, right? So when you want to get a really or a more confirmed setup is, let's say we get a breakout of this area. If you're not in the trade, we others already in this trade, right? So we would want to add positions when we see gold breaking out of this area, closing outside of this area, moving up to these zones, giving us a little bit of a retest, right? So when we get a retest, that's when we want to now join the movement and right up to the top. Or if we don't get a retest, we just see a push of this resistance area that we have getting to this level. If we break out of this level, then there's a high chance that we're just going to push and go back to the top. So that's the scenario that I want to look at on gold, right? Or we might just, still reject off of this level and come back to these zones right here. That'll be for all of those that have missed the trade to now join the second wave, so that it pushes right back with us up to the top. So on gold, this doesn't look complicated. You just have to now wait and react to the market as it's progressing. Also, looking at the news, depending on whatever news is going to be delivered, that will cause the market to shift. Now let's look on onto the NASDAQ. This is literally the whole movement that we had for the week, this movement right here. So we didn't really get major moves, anything that we could have wanted to trade. But I want you to notice how we have two major areas that we are working with. We had this previous high that's right here that was broken out of at this level. It's acting now as a support area, right? But then the same time, we have also this support area that's right here at the bottom here. So we have this area right here. This is the first area that we're dealing with. And then we now have the most recent highs, which are right here. And then they haven't been broken out of. So this is our resistance area. And then we have our support area right here that we just explained. We should wait for the market to break either one of the ranges, right? We break out of this upper range, then we go up for the buys, or wait for a retest into these areas and then buy it, or we come back to these levels. A lot of eyes will be looking at these levels, so we're definitely going to break out of these levels, then probably buy it from around about this level, and then ride NASDAQ back up to the top. So when we normally get new highs, we now get fewer candlesticks. We don't really have points of reference. We can't really just trade with the little information that we have. Especially here, we're trying to trade with these few candlesticks, if you notice, on the daily time frame, which will make it very hard. But if we go over to the overall picture, you can clearly see that the overall thing that NASDAQ eventually has to do is to come back and retest those all-time highs that it then broke out of on this particular day. Pointless to trade in between this range. We want to wait for it to come to this level, breakout. If it does break out of this area, then obviously we have come to retest those all-time highs. Then this will make it a really good point of interest for the NASDAQ, and if it breaks out of the all-time highs. So NASDAQ doesn't look complicated, and obviously we would still have our little trend line like this, a rough little trend line, something like this, right? Now have a trend line retest plus a support area, you know, that gives us more confluence that we might get a good trade right over there. Now on US30, let's see what US30 is saying. Almost, right? So what I wanted was US30 to go back to the all-time highs and break out of those all-time highs, just like what NASDAQ did. And that's still my bias on US30, right? So what we're going to do is we'll mark up the all-time highs. It almost got to those all-time highs, but it did not actually get there, which will now make me, you know, want to still keep looking for those opportunities. But then from what level, especially if you're not in the market, right? And if we notice what US30 is doing is it has gotten to you know, the resistance level on the all-time highs, at the all-time highs, but we are not trading with a line. Remember, we're trading with an area. So this is the area that it got to, right? These are our levels. This is the area that we're looking at. So we can technically say it has gotten to that area and it's starting to reject off of that area, right? You know, but then what I like about this is it's giving us a little bit of a build up. Someone had asked to say this time it was also giving us a build up and then it dropped. This time it was also giving us a build up and then it dropped. But then what you're not noticing is at this level, these were all-time highs, right? So we didn't know if this was building up or this was just a continued movement. We just saw the market pushing up to the top, started forming these candles. We don't know if it was a resistance. It eventually turned into a resistance as it dropped, and then when the market came back, retested it and dropped. But then now we know for a fact that this is a resistance level. Then we see the market going back to a resistance level and forming a consolidation here. I would want to believe that there's a chance for the market to then break out of, you know, this resistance area and give us new highs on US30. But then that's just a possibility, right? We also know that there's a chance that it might reject over here and then drop back down to this areas. That's why we have another support level at that zone. And then if it does, we want to catch it from this level, still ride it back up to the top to break out of those all-time highs and see new highs on US30. And just like on NASDAQ, we do have a little trend line that will be guiding us also in case it drops to these levels, a trend line and a support area for more confluence, and then we ride up to the top. All right, so the market does not look complicated. Once again, just as usual, everything that we always do is what we're going to be looking forward to doing. Who is ready and super excited for a brand new week? If you did enjoy this breakdown and you found it helpful, don't forget to hit that like button, turn your post notifications, and subscribe to the channel. You feel me? With that, it's been Tino, and I'll see you guys in the next little video. Love you guys. My new bitch look like Tyler Perry, but she don't love me, she just